Hello everybody, my name is Tristan Christensen and I'm doing my presentation on microbial biofilms. What are microbial biofilms? A biofilm is defined as a complex microbiological ecosystem formed by single or multiple species associated with a matrix of organic polymers. Microbial biofilms can cause serious health problems and eventually lead to the recall of certain foods. The microorganisms in these biofilms are resistant to many antimicrobial substances such as disinfectants and cleaners, and it is important to recognize that they are not the same as planktonic cells.
As you can see in the picture on the upper right corner, microbial biofilms can be found in many different environments. For the sake of this presentation, I'll be focusing on them being found in food processing factories. It begins with an accumulation of organic and inorganic substances. Bacterial adhesion on an infected surface is considered the initial attachment of the bacteria to create a biofilm. This first layer is called the conditional layer and starts off very thin, but as cells begin to attach and multiply, it can become thicker. When the cells multiply, this is called the maturation phase. As these bacteria coats begin to layer up and that conditioning layer becomes thicker, the biofilm begins to form shape. As the other cells and nutrients join the colony, it begins the maintenance and dispersal phase. In this phase, the bacteria and nutrients in the cell work together to get rid of many wastes that are unneeded and to bring and absorb the nutrients that are needed to keep it thriving.
Microbial biofilms are not seen in the public eye as a positive addition to society. They can cause foodborne illness or disease, and they can be presented in many different forms and types of surfaces. They can be on the actual food that's being consumed, or on the equipment that it is being processed, or a plate or a table or any type of surface that has not been cleaned properly. In the past, there has not been very much research done on microbial biofilms, but throughout the years there have been more studies done, but there is still not a whole lot of information out there. It is common in food processing factories because if the machinery is hard to clean or not cleaned enough, the food being processed through it can be possibly contaminated.
Here are some possible advantages and some disadvantages of microbial biofilms. Even though the public sees them as mostly a detrimental aspect because they mainly experience the bad effects of them, such as foodborne illness or disease, what they may not know is that there have been studies shown to support the importance of biofilms in biotechnology. There was a study done on treated olives, and during this study, it showed the lactic acid bacteria that's growing on the biofilm on the outside of the olive, and basically that the lactic acid bacteria metabolized the sugar. This is important because it played a role in the preservation of the olive and contributes to its texture. However, normally microbial biofilms decrease the shelf life and preservation of the food that it is on. In the next point, I talk about how because of the loss of shelf life, many companies and food processing companies lose money because of this. In the long run, the purchasers also lose money, and they are less likely to repeat the purchase of that food if they do get infected with the foodborne illness. There have been some problems with microbial biofilms and some regulations that have been implemented. Many efforts have been made to eliminate and decrease the formation of microbial biofilms in the food industry. These include cleaning and sanitizing supplies and equipment. And even though that people and companies may clean and sanitize and think they got all of their surfaces clean, microbial biofilms are resistant to some sanitation surfactants and methods. So this means even though that their surfaces are clean, biofilms are still able to form. This is why it is important to change equipment and inspect areas regularly, because this helps to eliminate the bacteria that did not get killed during the cleaning and sanitation process. Here are some prevention techniques that can be used to decrease the amount of microbial biofilms in a food processing factory. The first one being real-time polymerase chain reaction, shortened as PCR. This is used to identify and monitor the number of bacteria in a specific biofilm. Now, this is not necessarily a prevention technique, but more of a maintenance and being aware of where these biofilms are so they can avoid them and not allow food to contact and be contaminated by them. The next point is to be consistent and have a regular cleaning and sanitation of the equipment throughout the factory. It is also important to limit any excess water on surfaces because microbial biofilms tend to adhere to aqueous solutions and begin to thrive. Along with that, it is also important to avoid any high temperatures, and if that is not possible, closely monitor and deeply clean any surfaces that were in contact with a high temperature. This is also because microbial biofilms tend to thrive at high temperatures. The last point is to take a look at the equipment design that is being used. It should be easy to clean and easy to exchange apart if needed. It should also reduce the accumulation of soil, which contains nutrients that can feed into the microbial biofilms. Here are some contributors to the formation of microbial biofilms. Similar to the previous slide discussing prevention techniques to decrease the amount of microbial biofilms, this talks about what happens if those prevention techniques are not done properly or done at all. The first one is lack of cleaning. Lack of cleaning allows bacteria to stay on the surfaces and for microbial biofilms to begin to form. This leads to the beginning stage of the formation of a biofilm, called the conditioning layer. The conditioning layer is the first aspect of the biofilm that adheres to the surface. It can be prevented, but it also is formed when the surface is not cleaned properly. Microbial biofilms also tend to thrive in high temperatures on the contact surface. Most of the microbial biofilms can be killed during cooking but some of them are heat resistant, and this is what causes any foodborne illnesses to be passed to the consumer when they eat the product. The last contributor is nutrient availability around around where the microbial biofilm is forming. If there is no nutrients, then the microbial biofilm will not be able to thrive and grow. However, if cleaning is not done properly or if soil is leaked into the factory, then these nutrients will be absorbed by the biofilm and the biofilm will continue to grow. In my opinion, microbial biofilms are bad. Even though there are some studies that show they can have some benefits in different settings, it's not enough to convince me otherwise. Any bacteria that can cause foodborne illness and is very hard to detect is not a positive thing for the food industry. But this also goes to show how important it is to clean and disinfect a surface even when it may appear clean. Here